Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to episode number 12. This episode is published as a podcast on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio, and is also available in a video version on YouTube. So you have many ways to enjoy the show. And as always, thanks to Ari Estruth of Brunjo Productions for the intro music created especially for this show. Learn more at brunjo.com. That's BRUNJO.com. Well, baseball fans, today we have a special treat for you, as I'll be joined by a special guest to discuss stars of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, along with the Pacific Coast League. Of course, we'll also have a timely limerick, our blast from the past, and the cap of the day. So let's get right to it. Let me introduce today's guest, a longtime fan of Major League Baseball, as well as the Pacific Coast League, a person with some great stories to tell about his experiences growing up as a fan with a focus on the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and a fan of the Giants. Someone I am pleased to know and to count as a friend, Mr. Ron Bolstad.
Good morning,
Ron,
Phil.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. This is a pleasure.
So
Always enjoy talking baseball.
Well, you're in the right program then. I always like to start out with our cap of the day, and the cap of the day today, Ron is wearing. And Ron, why don't you? Well, I'll describe it. It's a dark blue body, dark blue brim, and it has LA in big red letters right in the center, simple block letters. And then there is a matching red button on top to match the colors of the L and the A. So Ron, just tell us a little about that cap.
Well, the cap, Phil, is a vintage one given to me as a gift. I've been trying to relate to the timing of it when this style was worn, and the best I can come up with is about 70 years ago in the early 1950s, the Los Angeles Angels of the Pacific Coast League, who played in Wrigley Field, Los Angeles, to a stadium that at that time probably met major league standards. It was built by Phil Wrigley, and very similar to Wrigley Field, Chicago, with the ivy-covered walls and double deck around the infield and outfield. Wonderful ballpark.
Well,
no longer exists, of course.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. So kind of a replica of the Wrigley in Chicago.
Yes. So Los Angeles Angels of the Pacific Coast League. And
so I'm assuming you went to a few of those games.
In fact, that probably was my first in-person game. I would say around 1949-50. I'd been watching the games on black and white television at my aunt and uncle's house prior to that. And finally, my dad said, well, it's time to go to a game. And we went to an Angels game. And probably soon after, their arch rival across town, Hollywood Stars game. There were players in the Coast League who said that rivalry, Los Angeles and Hollywood, was the best that they experienced in their professional careers, even counting the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants.
Wow.
Or the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Oh, that's fabulous. That really makes the games fun to go to. There's that. Yeah, you have that built-in rivalry. So I want to talk a little bit about the PCL. So you grew up as a fan and following those in your first game. I'm assuming that has to do with the fact that back at that time, the westernmost major league team was in St. Louis. You had the St. Louis Cardinals, St. Louis Browns, but nobody on the West Coast until the late 50s.
That's correct. My interest started in baseball with recreated games on the radio, where someone read from a ticker tape, described the game, and interspersed, of course, personal comments about the fans and what the players were doing, and some of this pure fictional, but based on the characteristics of the ballpark that that announcer was already aware of. And then once in a while, I think, if memory serves me, there was a Musial game of the week or the day, and I would listen to that. I was a great radio listener. I was virtually an only child. My brother was so much older, and into tearing down old Model A's and Model T's, where I was listening to baseball and reading about baseball. So started out with radio. Occasionally there would be an exhibition game of mostly local major leaguers coming together for a benefit of one type or another. And I attended some of those in the early to mid 50s.
Okay, so yeah, an exhibition. So the players whose home was on the West Coast but played for a major league team elsewhere.
That's correct. And some of the PCL players that lived locally and would winter over in the greater Los Angeles area.
And when you were listening to the radio broadcast, did you have a favorite announcer at that time, or who was an announcer?
Well, actually, when you ask that, what comes to mind is watching the World Series on black and white television in the early 50s. Mel Allen. The Yankees, of course, were in the series year after year, 5 straight world championships. And fortunately, we in middle school, our principal was very lenient and set up a TV in the auditorium, and any of the kids that wanted to come in and eat their lunch there and watch could do so.
Wow.
And so we'd sit and eat our lunch and watch black and white with Mel Allen and others, Red Barber, announcing the games.
Sure. That's fabulous. Yeah. I remember I was a big fan of radio and still am. In fact, even though I can get the games on MLB TV now, I much prefer listening to them on the radio, because I think it's something about your imagination. And I read Roger Angel, the famous baseball writer, said something to this effect too, that there's something about when you're listening to the game, you use your imagination and you can feel like you're there. But when and the people can be heroes because they seem bigger than life. But when you see them on TV, it kind of takes a little bit of that away. So there's, and I guess the other thing I like about the radio is that you can be doing something else, working in the yard, doing some other project, and you can have that on and just enjoying the game, or falling asleep listening to the game. I used to do that.
Well, Phil, you're a kindred spirit of mine then, because I spent this spring pulling those weeds, listening to the Oregon State Beaver baseball games against Cal and USC, et cetera, even on the road. And you can multitask listening to the game with your imagination, and they working overtime.
They have had some good players come up. I think Adley Rutschman now is the new star for the Baltimore Orioles catcher, who was from Oregon State. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So in 1958, the Dodgers moved from Brooklyn to LA, and it's also the same year that the Giants followed them from New York to San Francisco. So how did that, do you have memories of that happening, and was that a big event for you?
It was a huge event. I was sad to see the Pacific Coast League teams move away. The Angels and the Hollywood Stars, San Francisco Seals, Oakland Oaks, and so forth, but certainly welcomed Major League Baseball. When I got home from college in 1958, my freshman year, in June, you can bet I was out at the Los Angeles Coliseum watching the Dodgers. with huge crowds, of course.
Mhm.
There was just such a thirst for Major League Baseball. In fact, that was partially the demise of the PCL, that the attendance had been going down year after year in the mid 50s because of television and because of talk of Major League Baseball coming. But those Dodger games were really a thrill. It was a crazy stadium that they contrived in there on top of a football field and running track that was built for the Olympics in the 30s, I believe. But with a short left field fence, it was a killer for a left-handed pitcher coming in. Sandy Koufax was brilliant. He was able to survive that. But I remember one game, it stands out. Warren Spahn, Hall of Famer, most wins for a left-handed major league pitcher, 300 and something, 60 or 80 wins. He came in there, he didn't last the first inning. Wonderful left-handed pitcher, but the Dodgers just took him apart in the first inning, and it was a happy thing for Dodger fans, but sad one to see a star like that not survive the first inning.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So that team, the 58 Dodgers, they have some names that I think lots of fans will remember. Yeah. Sandy Koufax, Johnny Padres, Don Drysdale, Carl Erskine, Don Newcomb. Oh, wow. Even Roger Craig, who ends up becoming quite a great pitching coach later on.
That's right. That's right.
And then in the lineup, wow, Gil Hodges, Don Zimmer at shortstop. That's interesting. Jim Gilliam, Duke Snyder, Carl Furillo, Pee Wee Reese. Wow, yeah, what a lineup.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. They didn't win the pennant that year. Took them a year, I think, maybe two, but lots of fun. That was 58. But actually, the first game I saw of Major League Baseball, an actual regular season game, was the Giants in Seal Stadium in probably April or May of 58. Open air stadium, no second deck. It was a PCL ballpark, but one of the nicest, concrete. And to see Willie Mays out there and the major leaguers at a PCL ballpark, you were so close to the players. It was a thrill, absolutely a thrill. And a friend of mine took me to the game. He had a press pass from our college newspaper that got him into the game and the locker room.
Oh, wow.
So we watched the game, of course, in the stands, but then he said, "You want to go down to the locker room?" I said, "Oh gosh, Stan, sure." And so there we were standing at the back of a group of reporters interviewing Willie Mays.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
Apparently he had won the game with a hit or a home run. So that was a thrill. That's one game of those many that I saw that I remember. First major league game that I saw on the West Coast.
Okay, so the Giants in 58 at Seal Stadium. Yeah, Willie Mays, let's see. He had a great season that year. He batted 347. Wow. With if we go by some more modern statistics, an OPS of 1.002,
wow,
which means he was 65% better than an average player.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. That is I'll have to look and see if gosh, that's like MVP caliber. I'll have to dig into that a little bit more. And also on that team, Orlando Cepeda, Hank Sauer, Felipe Alou. Let's see, I'm going to look at the pitching here. Johnny Antonelli, Mike McCormick, Stu Miller, back at that period, do you have a favorite player from that era? Is it Mays or?
No, believe it or not, it was Stan Musial of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, okay.
Yes. He just stands out. Number 6, an outfielder, first baseman for the Cardinals, 7 National League batting championships. I believe he played on 3 World Series champions for the Cardinals, all of his career with the Cardinals, from Donora, Pennsylvania. And absolute hero. I was able to get his autograph at the All-Star game in 1957 in St. Louis. It was an absolute thrill to do that.
So yeah, Stan Musial, amazing. So I've got his stats up on the screen here. He played 22 years. Started at age 20 and he played through age 42. Gosh, and he was still quite good at age 42. Career batting average 331, on base percentage 417. That's career. Wow. 976 OPS. So career 59% above average. That's amazing. Yeah. And MVP, yeah, it looks like 3-time MVP and came in as runner-up several other years. And I can't even count up all the All-Star awards on the screen. Too many.
I think he has the second most, played in the second most All-Star games.
And then, yeah, there was a period there too, where there are 2 All-Star games played, 59, 60, 61, 62. Anyway, there are 2 All-Star games and he's in both of them.
I don't know if you can recall his batting stance, but it was that probably was what one of the things that attracted me to him. He was left-handed hitter and he kept his feet very close together and very quiet at the plate. And then he kind of uncoiled with such a smooth swing, and he hit a lot of doubles. And that smooth swing, everything just seemed to flow from his batting style. So it seemed to be very unique.
Yeah, the batting style of different players really, it can draw your attention, especially when it's different, something that stands out. And it's interesting you mentioned doubles. Yeah, so my goodness, he led the league in doubles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. 48, 51, 50, 46, 53 doubles. I mean, that's terrific. And home run power too. And it seems like nowadays you'll see guys who hit 30 home runs and have 15 doubles. It's like, well, yeah, they just aren't fast enough, or they don't hit it in the gap. It's over the wall or it's nothing.
That's true. Yeah, he did. It would be interesting to compare his swing to today's Aaron Judge or someone where the swing is obviously to hit the bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. Now they teach them launch angle. I think, back then it was more teaching line drives and that steady, solid swing. And it's really a different approach. And I miss it. I like that line drive style. And overall, I think it's really a better way to go and better for the game too. But, okay. So Stan Musial. So it's time for our limerick, our baseball limerick of the day, a tribute to Stan Musial. On the field, Stan Musial did it all. With his smooth swing, directing the ball. 3 times the MVP, 7 batting titles won did he. Cardinals hero, Stan the Man, he was called. Oh, so that leads us into that All-Star game. You mentioned you got Musial's autograph. And if I recall from a previous discussion that we had, there's some unique circumstances about how you ended up getting to that All-Star game.
Well, indeed, there were unique circumstances. This was just prior to my graduating from high school. My mother said, Dad and I have talked about going back to see my family in Illinois after your graduation. And we thought we'd take the train and just relax rather than drive as we have in some previous years. And being a baseball fan and following enough to know that the All-Star game was going to be in St. Louis, I asked whether the train route would go through St. Louis. And they said, yes, it will go through St. Louis. I said, well, July 9th is the All-Star game. What do you think of spending the night in St. Louis? Oh, sure. I think we can fit that in. So she said, I'll send for tickets. And I was, of course, thrilled. She said, that'll be your graduation present from high school from us. So she sent off for the tickets, and a notice came back. I'm sorry, we're sold out. Mm-hmm. We have limited seating. I think Busch Stadium, which was a remodeled sportsman's park, held about 30,000. Fairly small in terms of today's attendance and ballpark size. So boy, was I disappointed, and she knew I was disappointed. She kind of promised that that's what we'd do. And so I don't know whether I knew she did this or not at the time, but she wrote to the president of the St. Louis Cardinals and explained that this promise had been made and the disappointment of the family, and we were going to take the train through St. Louis. And lo and behold, in the mails a little bit after that is an envelope with the return address, St. Louis Cardinals, and it's a letter from August Busch Jr., president and CEO of the St. Louis Cardinals, explaining why they refused to send the tickets earlier, that they had limited seating and it sold out immediately. But recognizing what we had planned to do, please go to Will Call. There'll be 3 tickets waiting for you.
Oh my goodness.
Couldn't believe it.
From the president.
Couldn't believe it.
And
here's this big signature, August Busch Jr. So he of course was president or CEO of Anheuser-Busch Brewery, which at that time owned the Cardinals. So we were rather excited, to say the least. And we did come in actually a day early and went to a doubleheader with Cincinnati on Sunday prior to I think it was a Tuesday All-Star game.
Oh, okay. So doubleheader ahead of time.
A doubleheader. Against the Cincinnati Reds. I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but a Cincinnati newspaper pre-printed ballots for the All-Star game with all of the starting position players of the Cincinnati Reds on it, pre-printed, and sent it out with each edition of the Cincinnati newspaper. The votes were flooding in for the Cincinnati players. And Ford Frick, the commissioner, intervened, and he had somebody do an analysis, and they found that the ballot box was being flooded with these pre-printed ballots. So he intervened, and Stan Musial was going to prevail anyway. But he overruled the ballot count from the fans, and he interspersed Hank Aaron and Willie Mays into the lineup.
Yes, well deserved.
But the rest of the position players were Cincinnati Reds, who may or may not have otherwise qualified, with their statistics for the All-Star game.
Oh, that's something. And then do I remember that you went to the game early to collect some autographs?
Yes, I had been doing that at ballparks for probably 8 years or so in the Pacific Coast League. So I said, well, let's go out to the game early, and I'll stand by the player entrance and see what I can do. And that was a treat because there was hardly anyone around doing that at the player entrance, which surprised me. There I stood, and numbers of these all-stars would come walking by, and I'd say, Mr. Spahn, can I have your autograph?
Wow.
Mr. Aaron, may I have your autograph? And now in retrospect, I feel like kind of an idiot as an 18-year-old standing there asking these players for their autograph. But and anyway, Mickey Mantle came by. He said, where is that locker room? Where do I get into this park? Of course, he's from the American League, and this is a National League, although he'd been there playing the St. Louis Browns, but evidently they had to get themselves to the ballpark by taxi. And I said, well, it's right over there, pointed to the entrance. So that was my claim to fame, my conversation with Mickey Mantle, pointing to the locker room. But
I did get to direct him in the right. Yeah,
I did get a number of autographs standing there by the entrance.
And do you still have those?
I still have them. Yeah. They when we get a fire notice here in the mountains that we should prepare our go bag, those autographs are right there, ready to go.
And is that in a book, an autograph book or
autograph book?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking. Yeah. So the 57 All-Star game looks like the one with all the Cincinnati players. Oh, Frank Robinson, well-deserved, certainly. Some others, less familiar names.
Those two I mentioned replaced Gus Bell and Wally Post. They had won the fan count, but they got bumped.
Right. That's great. What a good story. And do you have memories of the actual game, or is it like you're so starstruck that you almost can't pay attention to the game?
Both. Ted Williams played, and the newspapers and the St. Louis Sporting News made a big deal of Williams versus Musial. That they, so infrequently have ever had a head-to-head. And I dug out, this is the All-Star Game issue of the Sporting News.
Okay, yeah. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see Ron's holding up the 24th annual All-Star Game edition paper from the Sporting News. Wow.
And for those of your viewers, listeners that aren't familiar with it, this paper came out weekly, and it's all baseball. Box scores, everything for the prior week, articles.
My brother and I subscribed to that. It would have been in the 1970s, but we read that thing cover to cover every week.
There you go.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's great to have. Yeah. So that's all for today, my friends. Join us next week for part 2 of our discussion with Ron Bolstad, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.